You're not tough enough if you don't starve yourself enough. All these things, and I think it's crept up even into religion, where there's a emphasis on destroying the body in order to show God that you love Him, and I don't think that's what God intended. So how do you see
I
all of that?
totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I almost think like it's like a cry for help. Like
yeah,
I really think it's a cry for help. It's a cry for flow. It's a cry for achieving movement. And it's not like I think like a good example would be like the like marathon runners.
yeah.
Like I think the kind of desire to run
It's
long
insane.
marathons,
Yeah, that's insane.
it's crazy. I think it's from hypothyroidism. I do think it's from just high stress. There's not enough energy
So
flowing to the body. So they try to run. The running is the stimulation that
okay,
feels like what metabolism should feel like.
right, yeah. Well, today we're going to have a great discussion. We're going to have a interesting exploration of the world of biology, of health, nutrition, CO2. I've been fascinated by this topic lately in some of the programs that I've done. And we're going to get into some of the implications of the work of Ray Peat. And I'm going to test out some of the just previews of some of the work that I'm putting together in my research of linking physics and biology and anthropology and all of it leading back into this amazing story that unfolds with Jesus in history. And to do so, I've got a good conversation partner with me today, Nate Lawrence. How you doing, Nate?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, David.
Thank you. I saw you on Twitter and you were making some threads and stuff. Now you've seen to got the Twitter thing going. Tell me, at the risk of sounding like a boomer, what is the secret to great success with Twitter? Because I have to tell you, I know that it seems to have something to do with these secret knowledge threads
Yeah.
where you say, and I've thought about doing something like, I thought I'm like, how should I do this? Because that seems to be the thing everybody's doing, and I guess I need to hold my nose and be a part of the mimetic frenzy of Twitter more effectively if I'm going to do justice to promoting our content here. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so what do I do? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I could start it off. I could say, before Ray Peat left the surly bonds of earth, I talked to him, and here are 7 things he told me. One, don't make threads on Twitter. Two, get the hell off of the internet. Three, if you're doing this, you're doing it wrong. So I'm like, I don't know. You give me an idea. How should we use Twitter? It's
Yeah.
high vibrational metabolic rate. We don't want to be stuck in this disgusting mimetic frenzy to try to be heard in a sea. That's the problem that I have with the platform aesthetically is that it's a state of undifferentiation, right? So you're constantly like this noise. It's like trying to have a conversation in a bar. There's loud people everywhere. You can't, and you're like, hey, I'm trying to tell you, it's one particle. There's no monocharged particles. No, what? No, it's a magnetic particle, and you can't give it heard until you do outlandish, stupid things or something, and everybody stops what they're doing and they stop throwing darts and they stop drinking their Miller Lite and they say, what did he do? And then you can be heard. And I don't like that. The whole thing
Yeah.
is stupid to me, right? So tell me, how have you found success there?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I would always treat it like a notebook. And so there was something in that for me of iterating on my own ideas and kind of if it's something short or if it's something philosophical or if it's something I'm working out in terms of bioenergetic idea, almost stuff that I'm actively learning myself by trying to post that, trying to teach it essentially. I kind of solidify that in myself. And getting that feedback from other people is absolutely helpful. And
Right.
it was
Right.
probably a while for me where I didn't really have that big of a following. Over time, it just started to pick up because it was so natural and effortless to me. And that's kind of, I think, how it works is when you have something that you really sense that this is, oh, okay, this is gold. Almost taking that and then trying to think how you would describe that to someone in a conversation, that was huge for me. And then I
Yeah.
started to see the impact of that. So yeah, that's kind of how I'd look at it.
Right. So you when did you accept Ray Peat into your heart? How long ago was it?
It was, I think, in 2020, I first found him from Danny Roddy. I was looking into hair loss. I had a lot of like hair shedding, like facial puffiness and like kind of just bloating and stuff like that. And I found Danny Roddy's YouTube channel. Then I found Ray from there. And originally, I didn't really understand pretty much anything he was
Yeah.
describing, but it seemed intuitively like it made sense. And yeah, I think after a while, I dealt with like digestive issues. My issues just kept getting worse and worse. And I was really left with no option but to kind of come to Ray's ideas and learn more about it. And
So
that's
what
when
was
I
just
started
one
looking into
fateful
it.
day you took out a carrot and just started shaving it
No, yeah. You know what's funny is I've
epically?
loved carrots my entire life. I would
Yeah.
eat baby carrots all the time. I loved milk. I was a super picky eater. Probably like the only foods I would eat would be like peanut butter sandwiches, not even peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter sandwiches. I drink milk. I'd eat yogurt, bacon. Bacon was the only meat that I ate up until 17.
Wow.
Then I'd eat like candy and sweets and stuff like that. So it's all kind of in line with Ray's stuff, which was to me made it make even more sense. And then you look at like the kind of um things that kids are drawn to, novelty, stimulating activities, the sun, all these things support metabolism. And it just made so much sense because I think I heard Danny talking about it. Or no, it was actually, I think, a quote from Ray. Ray was talking about the goal that you should have should be to replicate the metabolism of a 10-year-old kid. And
Right.
that's how you're resistant to
Why
disease.
10? Why the number 10? Was there any
I think 10 was just an arbitrary number.
okay.
Yeah.
So why not 3? Is that
I
just too
mean,
hard? Is that too high of a reach?
I think it's an interesting
Jesus
idea.
said, such is the kingdom of these. I would say that was probably a 3-year-old or a
Yeah.
5-year-old, you know? So
Yeah,
that's
and we're
a little
told to
higher
act
than
like
10.
children. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like, because I think in Generative Energy, Ray's book, or one of his books, he mentioned, he think he said the infant is our evolutionary future. And I think his idea with that was that um, the higher levels of progesterone,
Right.
the larger the brains will become. And you look at kind of the
Yeah. Yeah.
baby,
Their heads are bigger than their bodies, right? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Are we? I hope we don't look like those gray aliens. They do not look like they've done well. You know, they don't look healthy. You know, do you think they look
No,
healthy to you?
no,
If
it's
that's what
funny
they look
because
like, they don't look
I
healthy.
think almost that kind of that figure must have been kind of
Poofa.
trying to get to this. Oh, Poofa, yeah.
Yeah, that's a poofa body because there's
Yeah.
just totally lost all gender, beauty. It's just disgusting. You know?
Undifferentiated blob. Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
my God. God help us if those things are out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can't be nice. At least the way those ones look. Uh, you think about you're talking about the future is an infant, right? That's Jesus said that such is the kingdom of these. The kingdom of these is not just like what you do when you get out of earth. That would be a mind body dualism. Okay. The kingdom of heaven, he says, is within you all, right? Here together, manifested on earth. So the kingdom of heaven, he's saying the future of earth is going to look like humans that are more like children in
Exactly.
the good parts of it, right? And I think there's a kind of like Faustian bargain people think you have to make that like when you're young, you're carefree, you have wonder, you have creativity, you have dreams, you have spontaneity, you have health, you heal fast. And part of growing up is you trade all of those in, but you get like wisdom and you get like you get intelligence or knowledge or something or social status, which is BS. But I think that what Ray Peat is saying, and I think it's downstream from what Jesus is saying, is it's about you don't have to make that bargain. You can have it all. You can have the high thyroid of a child, the high progesterone, the gregariousness of a child, the carefree attitude of the child, and have the wisdom and the knowledge of age come alongside it, right?
Totally. Yeah, and I think it's almost your duty to
Yeah,
preserve that, you know. And it's funny because Carl Jung had a good take on this where he thinks that the process of maturing it refines you into almost you're all potential as a child, and the more you mature, you become actual. And there's an
right.
inflection point of when you pass the I don't know if it would necessarily be a certain point, but almost you need to break through the middle to become a child again. And
Right.
that's an idea that Brute de Force, who's like a high level power lifter and gambler, but he's also like a philosophical guy. He's on Twitter, and he's a guy I'm friends with. He actually had this idea that the middle is the no man's land, and there's really the poor and the rich are the only ones that are living free in this world. So you need to go through the middle to make it to the top, but it's not like there's any almost like to me it makes sense in like a polarity.
But
Like
what is the middle? Maybe our natural life is 158 or 170. The middle should be adjusted. But I get what you mean, right?
yeah, because I think the two polarity that the positive and negative, the good and evil, they stimulate progress ultimately, and I think that's kind of the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, that's why it's kind of complicated because there's a lot of intuitive pushback against some of the tropes that come around the Ray Peat world that like, what do you mean there's no pain, no gain? There is something, and there's something true to that that is also not true. There's different ways of looking at that concept, but like we do have a kind of slave mentality where it's like we have to torture our bodies and I did a show with somebody who's also rapey, and I was talking about the gym bro culture, how ridiculous it is that men are taking drugs, weight loss drugs that they can potentially be killed from, and going to the gym and doing high stress involvement exercise just because they think that's the only way they'll get a girl to love them. That's such a woman's perspective on dating, right? That it's my appearance that matters so much. That's assuming that a woman values the same, things that a man values, and when he selects a mate, and that kind of undifferentiation that takes place not only in the androgynous movement, right, and the gender bending, but also in things like the gym bro culture. All of these things are still based on this kind of, in order to find myself, I have to hurt myself. Like even these surgeries that have to do these, like the California thing with the kids, surgery, pain, suffering, cutting, horrible things done to the body to be yourself, or going to the gym and doing hours of cardio or very intense exercise to the point that you're sore with lactic acid for a long time and you're breaking down your tissue, or you have to eat calorically restrictive and you're not tough enough if you don't starve yourself enough. All these things, and I think it's crept up even into religion where there's a emphasis on like destroying the body in order to show God that you love him. And I don't think that's what God intended. So how do you see
I
all of that?
totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost think like it's like a cry for help. Like
Yeah.
I really think it's a cry for help. It's a cry for flow. It's a cry for achieving movement. And it's not like I think like a good example would be like the like marathon runners.
Yeah.
Like I think the kind of desire to run
It's
long
insane.
marathons,
Yeah, that's insane.
it's crazy. I think it's from hypothyroidism. I do think it's from just high stress. There's not enough energy
So
flowing to the body. So they try to run. The running is the stimulation that
okay.
feels like what metabolism should feel like.
Right. Yeah.
That's my
So tell
hypothesis.
people, give people some simple heuristics, maybe if you can, to how they know the good feeling is from stress or the good feeling is from a high metabolism that's thyroid based. Because you can have high metabolism running on the stress complex of hormones, right? And that's what
Yeah,
you're
I think
describing
so.
there. So how would you describe some, do you have any heuristics or just simple practical guides for feeling the difference between the two states?
Yeah, I think one of the most clear ones to me is needing things to be a certain way. I think when you're
Interesting.
in a state of high metabolism, nothing needs to be a certain way. You can go with essentially go with the flow is the kind of metaphor to it, but it's not even a metaphor. And I think when you need really particular outcomes, when you need to say things a certain way, you need to sound perfect. That
Huh.
to me is
Huh.
a sign of preservation or
Interesting.
more so just like a scarcity of energy. You're trying to
Interesting.
do the best with what you have. And like there's a quote from William Blake. He said, "The fox provides for himself, but God provides the lion." And to me, that was like the idea of cunning versus like intuition and like submission to God.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's almost that should be the big focus is just letting go and trusting the divine. But
Right. Faith, childlike
exactly,
trust.
totally, yep,
Because when you tell kids that God exists, they don't say, "Oh my God, I haven't seen it." They're like, "Okay, that makes okay." It's like this invisible thing that runs everything. Okay, I can buy that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and when they're young at a certain age, you know, before they get the effects of the stress system that we all buy into, which is what the Bible is talking about when it talks about the bondage to decay. In Romans, it talks about that the creation awaits the arrival of the sons of God because they will help set creation free from the bondage to decay. That's death anxiety, right? So when death came into the earth, that was not just physical death, but the death anxiety, like whole stress complex related to that, right? I think that Jesus is reigning on God's right hand until he has made a footstool of his enemies, and that includes sin, Satan, and death. And death includes that stress complex that we're all running on. We have to solve that in order to move forward as a species and to evolve to a higher state. But going back to the kid thing, when they deal with death, that they're not racked by it like us. They're like, oh, okay, that's like, oh, that's yeah, they're like they're sad, but they just okay. If you say, well, there's a heaven, and that's what we'll see people again in that new heaven and new earth here on earth, they're like, okay, that makes sense, right? Um, so our design is designed for an eternal state of being on this planet, right? Not detached from the physical material, but embracing it and doubling down on it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like I think there's something interesting with the stress hormones. I think a lot of peat adjacent people typically think that they need to be eradicated and they don't serve any purpose. But really, like, if you look at like nitric oxide, it's like our primary defense against foreign pathogens. Or if you look at estrogen, it drives growth in the cell, but without progesterone, that will be undifferentiated growth. So it's like when you have the oxidative hormones, which to me are our connection to God, that structures this fallen world.
Tell
And it
people
makes
what
a lot of sense.
oxidative hormones are. Oxidative
Oh, yeah. So like thyroid, dopamine, progesterone, GABA, like these are typically hormones that would be considered with thyroid driven metabolism. And
those are the hormones that are gonna signal abundance to the human, right? That life is
exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Hakuna Matata, they used to say. Remember that kind of mindset, right? That's like the state of bliss of like the Garden of Eden, but more, right? Um, so we're supposed to go further than that. So you're saying that there is a kind of dualism that can creep into people as trying to pit the oxidative hormones like thyroid and progesterone versus these more classical stress hormones. What we call
Yeah.
was that would be reductive hormones, or how would you describe that? Would there be a term that you would use for that?
I look at it as like oxidative metabolism versus stress
Yeah,
metabolism. And I
yeah,
actually made a graph on this before.
yeah.
Maybe I could like send it. It was just
Sure.
a tweet that I made. But yeah, I think like all of them serve a role in reinforcing, all of the stress hormones serve roles in reinforcing oxidative metabolism as the dominant state. And to me, it's almost like that makes this spiral upwards. Like it's like you need stimulate or you need a stimulus to grow, like in the gym, like you need a degree of injury, tissue injury to stimulate muscle growth. So it's like that I saw as a similar thing. And then like this idea of like a spiral upwards from like William Blake, who was kind of the backbone of like Ray's philosophy. Almost you look at like thyroid and you look at the different oxidative hormones, they are self-perpetuating and reinforce themselves and they increase energy over time. So it's like there's these upward spirals and
Yeah.
downward spirals that kind of compete between
So
each other.
these stress hormones are not evil. That's what we're trying to get at. They're not ontologically evil.
It's
Um,
it's a hard thing to look at. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really the nature of being in a fallen world is and we don't have the answer to it, but really trying our best to oppose stress is the whole point, not to eradicate it.
exactly. And um, is it possible to have both kind of high in your life? Then what does that feel like? How would one know that? Your
Yeah, I
thyroid's
mean,
high and your other these stress hormones are high.
yeah, I think it's definitely possible. Like, I think Ray actually was talking about this where he said like, because I've gotten to this idea with like brute de force. We've spoken about this of like living a life of striving for greatness really requires that you put yourself in situations that you don't necessarily find to be the most stress-free, right? It's like I think a stimulating opportunity will kind of overcome the detrimental effects of that. And it's almost like you will always upregulate eventually if you just follow your intuition. That to me is when you have this bioenergetic understanding of what foods to eat, what activities to do that can oppose stress and support the thyroid. That's really what I see it as.
I can give you an example in my own life. One of the things people are most terrified of is talking about religion in front of other people or strangers or politics. And I've done both for over quite some time publicly in my written work and radio work. Another thing people are scared of that I had to get over myself in different ways is public speaking. Just that itself is a stressful environment. And I have a theory that I don't know if you're familiar with Rene Girard and the scapegoat mechanism and all this, but if you're familiar with this
A
anthropology,
little bit, yeah.
there's something we talk a lot on this show. But I have a theory that it's related to something like a scapegoat instinctual aversion to being a scapegoat, because when you're speaking and there's a crowd, there's a mob. There's, even if they're sitting down or whatever, there's still a mob that can be activated, and you're the isolated one out of the crowd, so they're all staring at you, and that's usually not a good experience in our past. If the whole crowd is united and they're looking at you as the different one, if you make a mistake, things can go awry really bad. Like if you tick them all off, or you sing a bad song and it's really annoying, things can go wrong really quickly there. And that's what Rene Girard says. We don't invent our gods, we deify our victims. And it's like this idea of like
Mhm.
the love hate dynamic of celebrities, that we raise people up and then we tear them down, and we use them as our kind of like myth making apparatuses. But I think that is part of the fear of public speaking. But again, just in my own in life, doing public speaking so often, so long, at a young age, at first there's like this huge, you feel the adrenaline. And then now, the more you do these things, you notice your heart rate is very relaxed and you don't feel that way. And that's just overcoming, most people are just freaking out when they have to talk in front of a group of people. And then you do radio broadcasts, and sometimes I'd show up, traffic would be high when I was doing it in Orlando or Tampa, and I'd be coming in with my music, my theme music playing, and I'm running to the mic to hit,
Yeah, yeah.
hello, yes, I've been here all day waiting for
Hey,
you. Um, but that kind of stuff, trial by fire, does really, it really helps, because you can do something bigger and bigger and bigger with that. The more you build on that type of practice of stress and overcoming it. And I think, they've done these little research studies where they've shown that like it's not stress that hurts your body and your arteries, but actually your perspective of it, right? Like your mindset. It's
exactly. Yep.
everything, the difference, right?
Yeah, and I honestly think because that's kind of my view of stress is like if you perceive something as a stress, it is a stress. If you do
Yeah.
not, it's not a stress. And it's almost like
Right. Yeah.
that's I think the antidote to stress. But yeah, it's something funny to me about like public speaking is that like I view human performance as kind of the pinnacle of like the work of God. And it's like when you can overcome like actually it was like brute de force brought up this idea that like the irony of becoming zen is that you need to take the exact opposite path to get there. You meditate in the heat and then you kind of acclimatize to that, and it's
Yeah.
almost funny to think of because I think metabolism can be seen in a similar way where when you're in a stressed state you don't necessarily want to do what it takes to restore energy, and
Yeah.
it's almost chasing higher energy should always be the goal, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because I think in a poor situation, there's a sense of control of that. And there's a sense of, I don't need to do anything that will get me. It's almost you don't have the energy to muster up to get outside of it. So you end up finding peace in it, which is, I think, where death starts. But
Yes. Yes. That's part of the reign of the death over the earth, right?
totally, that's another part of it too. Yeah.
Yeah, the reign of death has to be defeated before the project of humanity is at its fulfillment. So you look at uh what you mentioned this idea of like using stress to overcome in your state of mind, but then at the same time you have things like Ray Peat, suggesting don't do these ice cold plunges and stuff. So what's the difference? He doesn't
I
want you to be stressed out from that, harming your body, and the rush that you get to overcome that state might feel good, but it's not good on your body. You're running, you're running it in ragged by doing things like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, to me, it all comes down to intuition. Really, it's like, I think when you have a mission in life, you know what you need to do to get there, and you know what will harm you, and you know what will debilitate you, and you know what will lead you forward. And that's, I think, the whole idea is to just lean in to what you know will lead you forward, and trust and have faith, essentially,
You're
that
saying that
you
you're
will
saying
upregulate.
does that mean that the cold plunge might be helpful for some people but not for others or something? Or
I think like if you look at the context, where does a cold plunge lead? To me, it leads nowhere. So like
yeah.
I don't think it's
But then you have
helpful at all.
I could still man up say, well, Russians have done it for a long time and they've produced some of the greatest geniuses in medicine and health
True.
and engineering. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying that all those guys were doing that. I'm just saying that is a cultural practice with a lot of they've got a lot of good fruits in their track record of brilliance, right? Which it has
Yeah.
to be. Yeah.
And I totally agree. Yeah, it's I think like when you feel healthy, I think cold plunging is actually a good thing. I mean, I
Okay.
felt good from it when I've been in a healthy state, but when I think first started like really dealing with like symptoms of hypothyroidism, I this was right around the time I would take like cold showers all the time, and I would feel so horrible for like the hours after. I'd be shivering hours after. To me, I knew there was something wrong with that. I just stopped, and then I found Ray's ideas, and he was like, no, you shouldn't really be going in the cold. You can just go in a normal warm shower. And I'm like, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense to me
Yeah.
with like what I'm experiencing. So yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So, so maybe a cold plunge is like a dessert for a super high state of thyroid that you kind of push yourself for the thrill of it, not necessarily something that most people would want to do regularly for any benefit, right? Because
This is actually something I wanted to ask Ray about because I was thinking like adrenaline seeking activity to me, like I think there's goals that like almost transcend your own self. And I
yeah,
think those are the highest goals.
yeah.
But really like there's an aspect of needing to sacrifice yourself, which I think is a good thing. It's always important about the context. So that's again intuition to me. But
Let's go through some of these different chemicals. You mentioned nitric oxide. That helps us to fight off diseases, infections. What about cortisol? What does cortisol feel like? How do we become more in touch with these states of being and states of mind that we have? And we're like, what am I, why do I feel this way? Is this thyroid? Is
yeah.
this, is this adrenaline? Is what, it's like just a big, for people, it feels like a big giant mess to try to figure out. Obviously, it's not like your body is running on one chemical, like, hello, it's thyroid time. And now it's adrenaline. There's all these things are happening like an orchestra, but how would people pick out these needles in a haystack sensations? Like, what does cortisol make you feel like?
Yeah,
How do you
that's
know?
interesting you say that because I think almost like I've put together my own picture over time just from reading about each hormone or reading about each substance or whatever it is. And that's how I think a person can start to develop the intuition to kind of sense it. But like I think like noticing stress is almost always something where I feel that my lungs, I'm breathing mainly through my lungs, not in my belly. It's a very tight breathing, a lot of high breaths, or I mean,
Yeah,
not a lot of high,
yeah,
a lot of quick breaths. That's, I think, one thing to notice.
yeah,
Your hand out, I think in like seeing how much your hand shakes is another one.
yeah.
I noticed something interesting where if you stick your tongue out, you can actually look to see if your tongue is shaking also. I
Wow.
think that's another sign you're running off stress. I haven't
Like
seen
those
any
little chihuahuas, their little tongues are just a shaking when
kind
they're
of.
screaming
Yeah.
at you. Those are high serotonin animals, or what is that? Is that high cortisol? What's going on with those little guys?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think just from probably the process of breeding and like
Good
just the
God.
appearance,
What's
they're
it look
probably
like?
pretty
What's
high
their thyroid?
stress.
I mean, are they have a high thyroid too because they're so energetic, or is that just all stress?
I think it's
Poor
probably
little
stress
thing.
driven,
Poor
but it would be
things.
interesting to look into now that you're
Yeah,
saying that. Yeah.
yeah.
There was actually a post I think by someone in this like the right sphere of like there was a transformation of like a sad looking dog kind of like overweight, and then they
Yeah.
gave it thyroid therapy. It
Yeah.
was like smiling after it lost a bit of weight. It was so interesting to me. But
What about that story he said where he they gave a little CO2 to a dog and his eyeball came back?
oh,
What
regrew the
happened?
eyes. Yeah.
What is that?
Watch me.
Is that real? Gosh.
It's so funny to me because I think people really sleep on this like idea that like carbon dioxide is like such an important factor for supporting tissue
Yeah.
growth, bone development, really just energy overall and just structuring the body. And it's yeah, I think like a lot of people can find benefit from it. Like I think Ray would use like what do you call it? Garbage bag, fill it up with carbon dioxide and just take like a bath in that. And I think person could do that on their limb if they had like some sort of like local injury. I've heard people get good results from that. So yeah,
If you get your arm chopped off, put a trash bag around your shoulder and just pour carbon dioxide for a long while and don't
just
put any.
just regrow the whole thing. Yeah. No, yeah, it's funny because I think like there's definitely like when a person is younger and if they have like because I think you I heard you talk about it with like the regrowing the pinky and like stuff like that. But yeah, it's almost like
But
it could never harm.
once we better understand the energy effects going on there, I think we will be able to regrow limbs once we understand, how to be more in control of our own evolution, so to speak, right? To be
Yeah,
able
I
to
mean, I
generate
think
tissue.
there's always a chance for like kind of to me it's interesting to think about like will disease ever be eradicated? And I typically think it won't. I typically think it won't until the last judgment, really. That's honestly kind of where I see like because there's solutions I'd say, but the solutions are really just the holistic ones that you mean that you need to support.
I came to Ray Peat through a pipeline of keto, carnivore, and I was understanding seed oils, right? And the seed oil thing, I was like the first guy in news media and radio talking about these on a regular basis. Outside of the, let's say, the nutritional ghetto space of the podcast world that's into health and nutrition, I was out there talking about the seed oil thing for years every day. Stay away from toxic seed oil sludge. This is what it's related to. This is what it's doing to our bodies. And I had a lot of the seed oil prominent voices on, and it was around that time I started getting really. Actually, I know exactly. Yeah, it was a friend of mine that well, I didn't know him. That we became friends later, but I was speaking at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, and I was talking about the way in which government and corporations retard scientific progress, right? And I was talking about ketogenic or carnivore or something, and a gentleman came up to me afterwards. He's like, "You need to look into this Ray Peat guy," and it just took me a while to really, like I was circling that for a long time before things
Me
started really
too.
clicking. It just
Yep.
really took some time for me. Because I was coming at it. It's like you get tunnel vision, right? You're focused on one thing. So I was looking at it like, okay, well, great. He's a compatriot on the seed oil, and he's like the original guy. Man, this is awesome. Now I've got the original Yoda of the seed oil topic in my Rolodex to learn from. I'm going to dive in, and I tried to have him on in that regard, but I kept seeing this broader philosophical thing he was saying. I'm like, whatever's going on with that. If my intuition was telling me stay, right? And stay and learn and don't worry, you'll figure it out. And that was probably the Holy Spirit guiding me and towards like, okay, it's time for you to keep going now. And
Yeah,
then, and I don't think you ever stop. It's not like, okay, we're stopping in the Ray Peatville and that's it. It's like, this is a journey, right? We're going to learn about this stuff even deeper and better over years.
totally. Yeah, it I think it almost takes someone like a kind of initiatic experience to kind of get into because I think for the most part Ray is getting at like really he's continuing the evolutionary ideas of like the kind of what the primal crowd had, but building on that because I think the return to nature is never the point. It's almost that idea
Right.
to me was always like trying to go back to what we were is I think just returning to primal function. I don't think that was ever the point. So
Peter
that's why
Thiel says that's a return to Edenism, and he rejects that idea. He calls it against Edenism.
yeah, that's
And I think
funny.
he's right on that. I think he's still doing paleo, or I don't know. I've heard him talk about like sugar in a way that sounds like he's still doing the paleo thing, but he's someone that believes that we should live forever and that Christians should fight against death. And I agree with it. I think
Yeah.
I I got these ideas back when I was studying some of the like folks like Bishop N.T. Wright and even some of the post-millennialists like Dr. Peter Lightheart, who are talking about like an optimistic eschatology, that like our point is not to wait to be whisked away from this disaster of a planet. It's all a big disaster going to hell. But actually, it's like, no, once we are redeemed with the second Adam, we're situated back in the garden, but we're now going forward to complete the mission of being co-participants in the process of the evolution of the planet and in the species. We are the viceroy of God's creation. And
That's a beautiful way to see it. Yeah.
once we become aware of that and what that means, we can help like guide all of the species towards a better state. And I think the lion and the lamb is going to happen through our involvement. That's crazy, I know. But what I'm saying is I think we're going to help the lion learn how to like not have to eat the lamb. He's going to be so high vibration, he's not going to need it. You know what I mean? And he's going to be able to lay down with that lamb and not
Yeah.
eat it. And that's like, so that's a picture of where we're going, right? Of like the it's like an attack on the domain of artificial scarcity. That's what stress is all about. It's like it's what you have to do when you're in that state of scarcity. But if the kingdom of heaven is coming to earth and we are the body that manifests it through our intentions and our intuition and our creative acts of healing and so forth, we will be able to like overcome the domain of death. And I say, I think we could. I don't know. I don't really care. You know, everybody, this is the left brain part of us that wants to shut down and like, okay, so what are you saying? Are you a post-millennial? A little left brain stuff, categorizing. Okay, what team are you on? I need to know, or I'm really nervous right now. That's why I don't talk about what church I go to. I mean, it's like, goodness.
Yeah.
Once you say it, you've got to deal with all of that, you know? I'm tired of it. I don't care, you know? What a waste of time. What a waste of time to deal with like, well, that means you're not my partner now. I don't like you. And I'm going to try to sell you the rest of my life on this stuff. And it's like, no, man, you have to get beyond these kind of child play things, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that, in other words, we're going to be a part of like the focus. I think what happens with people when they get obsessed with like, it's a stress-based theology, right? It's a made in their own image. They think it's God. It's not. They make it in their own image where it's like, you know, the point of being a Christian is the denial of anything good and pleasurable, right? And like anything pro growth. Like we don't want to deal with evolution. We're just trying to get out of here and keep our souls alive for God. And it's like, no, that's a defeatist mindset. That's not the point. What about Paul saying that creation waits for the sons of God to be revealed to set it free from the captivity decay? Did you not understand? You know, like
Yeah.
that doesn't mean what you're thinking of, like, let's hide in our prayer closets and be so heavenly minded we're no earthly good. That's nonsense.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's funny because you look at like, isn't the whole idea to make a heaven on earth? Like,
Right.
and I think that it should be very clear that holy life is ultimately something that's eternal, and we do live in a fallen world. That's why I think the story of Babel is important. But I think almost I forgot my train of thought, but yeah, no, I do kind of align with that idea. But I think like the Tower of Babel is something that I was trying to always be aware of because I think you
Don't
can get
use that
caught.
as an excuse, as a cop out to not follow
Yes,
God, right?
totally. Yeah, and
Because
that's
the Tower
exactly
of
how it's set
Babel
up.
was defeated
Yeah.
prophetically with Pentecost,
Mm,
right? He already solved that. So why are we still worried about the Tower of Babel?
yeah.
Now, obviously, yes, like I will say the invention of industrial seed oils as food is a classic, I've used this, Tower of Babel moment. Let's try to create a Frankenstein fat of the future using industrial chemical processes that will be superior to our ancestors' fat that they butter and animal fat, right? We can do better than God. Like God created these materials, but surely that's poisoning us. It's almost a hatred of the matter. It's like a Gnostic error that was made in their attack on saturated fat. Oh, what God has created cannot be good. It's profane. It's awful. And what we will do is our scientific Gnostic class will create, you know, using this Frankenstein process of seed oils, and we'll make that the new fat that will liberate us It's a false Christianity. It's like a false perversion, right? We're going to set man free from the bondage to decay of God's goodness in his earth, right?
Yeah, and it's a reductionism
Yeah.
driven. Yeah.
Do you think it's ironic that he says like this reductionist thinking, and he also talks about reductive stress, or is there something there?
That's interesting you say that. Yeah, I think it I don't know, that's funny. Yeah, because I think oxidation, if you just look at oxidation as the flow of energy and reduction as the impairment of that flow and the buildup of essentially stress, but also toxins. And because I always look at it through the lens of digestion, because that's the easiest way for me to see it is when digestion becomes impaired, energy becomes static, then that's when life essentially starts stagnating. And that's when you aren't living a vitalistic existence. And
Right.
to me, it's the whole point is promoting the flow of energy at every level. And that's Ray's thesis, of course. The energy and structure are interdependent at every level. And then
Mhm.
if you just look at anywhere in life that flow has become impaired, figuring out how to repair that is ultimately the whole task I think we should be doing
Right,
here.
right, right. Exactly. And there's something impaired. Oh man, I don't want to go there, but there's something structurally impaired in the energy of the church when, if they have the truth, it's such an intoxicatingly beautiful truth that the whole world should be dying to be a part of it. And the fact that that's not exactly what we see shows that there's more room for improvement.
Yeah. I mean,
You know what I mean?
that's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like, how can you muck up such a beautiful thing when you see it? It's like, if you just get out of the way. I always say that the cross is scandalous enough. We don't need our scandals to muck it up so people can like get fixated on our human derived scandals that get in the way of the vision of the scandal of the cross. Like this, you see what I mean? Like we add all of our dumb, like mental models and theological constructs on top to like get in the way of like the scandal of the aesthetic and the story of the cross. And like you said, the poetry of the whole story unfolding in the Bible. And if we get out of the way, like the spellbinding mystery, the mesmerizing beauty and grandeur of the story is enough to confound and bedazzle and attract the whole world. But we get in the way of it because we think we can like package it up for our own particular interests, right?
Yeah, I mean that's I think it's funny because I think William Blake highlighted that like Jesus I mean he did say like I didn't come to send peace but I came to send a sword like the to separate people but yeah I don't know it's to me almost like there's a kind of unity of like decentralization
Yeah.
that isn't the unity of the kind of modern world of like or what do you call it like diversity and inclusion because that's a thing that I don't think is good, of course. I mean, in the sense that
That's
unity
a
is something that comes naturally. It should not be something that's forced. That's
right,
I think the point. But
right. That's like an estrogenic, stressed out perversion of the process of the universal picture of the church having all these nations, but what DEI is trying to do is trying to force that in a ham-fisted authoritarian sense that's all envy and stress motivated.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
the inclusion and the diversity should
yeah.
come naturally. It's not something that should be imposed. Yeah.
I believe somewhere Ray suggested, and you may have even mentioned this in one of your podcasts, that he didn't just say that children are the future of the human species, but also woman is, right?
Yes.
So Hillary's happy now. Hillary Clinton said the future is female, so she probably will read Ray Peat now. But that's not. They have different views there.
Yes.
They mean
Yeah.
different things. Hillary means like all the stress, the, the stressful version of
The
it.
girl bossing. Yeah.
But I think that's important for people, right? Because there's a lot of people on the internet that are very much mimetically reacting against like girl boss dialectically. And it's like, well, the things that are negative about females because of the poisoned state that so many of us are in, right? And what Ray is talking about is female in its optimized high vibrational state that God intended, which is higher in progesterone, not dominated by estrogen, right?
Exactly.
And
Yep.
those are the types of whimsical, wondrous characteristics that females are legendarily known for throughout the ages that people write poems and have their musings about, right? It's because of the kind of gregarious, childlike wonder that they kind of inspire in people, right?
I think so. I
Yeah.
really think that the female represents consciousness, and I think it's wisdom,
Yeah.
honestly. And to me, there's kind of something of like a contrast between the masculine action and chaos, and I really do see female structuring the male chaos of flow and just
Right.
going towards a task. So that's honestly what I thought with Ray, and then of course like the progesterone being the anti-stress factor, I think is another
Because the female is the one that
part.
provides the nourishment, which is essential for like high health, right? I mean,
Exactly.
essential ingredient, and
Yep.
and keeping a stress-free environment in the house, so you can rest, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And I think I thought about that. It makes sense because you look at it from again the biblical perspective. You think about man as like this mission to lead the human race, and you're like, well, if the future is more female and baby-like, why is man given the task to lead? And I think what it is that, well, there's one way to look at it is that, men are wired to um, with their, they have more of a desire to go into the abstract and intellectually, go into these things to figure out these concepts. And that can be a problem. And ultimately, the future will not need that as much as men are successful in fighting off the effects of stress. Like it's almost like man is the warrior that protects the child and the woman from the bondage to decay that is the stress state, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, if we're successful in doing that, if the whole world is drinking orange juice and milk, so I'm just being like facetious here, but the point is like if the whole world increasingly goes in that higher vibrational state of healing diseases, like I can't even say it because that one that I just did with the doctor, the anesthesiologist got deleted off of like,
Oh, did it really?
yeah, we got a
Wow.
week
Yeah.
strike. Wouldn't even promote that channel because the one we did before was deleted. We don't even promote this channel on that platform, and they're still vicious in their little algorithms, very stress induced algorithms. But the point I'm trying to get at is that man is almost like this sacrificial warrior that you have to go in there and like you have to use your kind of like you said, the stress that makes you get to the better state. We have to get into that stress stuff to overcome it, to battle in that world of dragons and monsters. That's a stressful thing, right?
Yeah.
And that includes all the psychopaths that have lied to us about what medicine is and like keeping us sick and artificially decaying at rapid rates because of you know, their their wrong-headed thinking, right? Telling people to load up on tons of PUFA every day and all these terrible things that backwards ideas about how to heal diabetes and other things. Uh,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
what I'm saying is like if man is successful in doing that, it does open up the space for man to then enjoy that higher progesterone type state that women model for them of
Totally.
gregarious childlike play, right?
And I think that's the whole point is reaching a state because I've one of my ideas is that I think life should be effortless. And I
Yeah,
th essentially think that man should be able to do what he needs to do and relish in that. And almost anything that gets in the way of a man enjoying duty is essentially evil and demonic. And it's almost like that because what you're talking about, like the reversal of like the truth, that's absolutely what it is, the reversal of nature and reversing the gender roles is a part of that. So I
yeah,
think like when you have the high energy state man and female are fully integrated as a unit. It's because I think William Blake had this idea. He had like he talked about the four zoas, and the first zoa was essentially just the world of single vision or single there's essentially only one level. That was his version of hell. Then there was the world of subject and object. Then you move into subject and object unified, and then you move into the creator and the creature together. So it's like that's almost like these different levels of spiraling
right.
together.
Yeah,
And he has actually a painting of like a male and a female inside a flower, like intertwining. That to me was just a perfect image
right,
and like symbolism of it.
right. Yeah, I've always viewed history because they're always talk about like history is cyclical. And I'm like, no, I think it's more like a spiral. And I'd always draw my hand like going on a roller coaster where you have these spirals that, so we may be in a period of history. I don't think we are, but You can go through periods of time where, man, it feels like we've been declining for some time. And you say, well, therefore, history is either going down or it's always a cycle that always ends in a down note, which is that's the classical pre-Christian view of history, based on the sacrificial mechanism, which is that the best years are the golden years, and the best years are always behind us as a culture, as a nation. You know where that comes from? That's the high vibrational state of childhood being squeezed out by poor nutrition and bad behavior practices, right? And so these ancient societies were literally collectively, oh, we have a golden age. We must just only hope we can get a glimpse of that back. And here's where it gets interesting, right? Because Jesus, his first miracle is the way the wine at Cana, right? He turns the water into the wine taste, and he brings out the best wine at the end, which is like a repudiation. It's like a declaration of war on that endless cycle, that the dumb, Nietzschean cycle of the endless return, the endless, the eternal return, and that kind of like we're locked in this endless repetition is the pagan hallmark of history. Christianity comes in there and invents the future as a concept for people to wrap their minds around. It invents actually the concept of history as like this goal of trying to ascertain the facts objectively, no matter who it hurts, right? Like this idea of like, we're going to find where the bodies are no matter what, like, because that's like a thing to aspire to, is a Christian invention. Before that, it was always propaganda. It's like, yeah, we'll tell you our history, but it's from the perspective of the winners who write it. And Christianity has this aspiration of like, well, no, not just that, but we'll also just tell you the history, even when it makes us look bad, right? It makes our team or our country look bad, right? So it invents history to give us the proper ability to recall the truth of history. It also invents the future as a concept. And therefore, we have the ability to evolve and go past where we're at now. I think
Exactly. And
that's
the best
exciting
is
as hell.
always
I
yet
mean,
to
what else is
come.
there to do?
Yeah. I think that the best is always yet to come. Like
Yeah.
to think that it's locked out or you can reach a peak or I honestly think because like Nietzsche's ideas, I think there's a lot to grab from that. But really the more that I started learning about Christianity, the more I realized it's just a downstream like stress philosophy.
Right.
And it's
Right.
almost like
Right. He was stressed out. That's why he was literally chewing his tongue at the end of his
yeah.
life, because he couldn't figure out how to overcome the Christ, right?
And I still like Nietzsche, but really like his ideas like the will and like will to power and stuff like that. It's like I posted about this because Ray I think had a critique. Yeah, it was Ray who had like a critique on Nietzsche,
Yeah.
and he was like what I alluded or what I gained from what he said. I don't remember exactly what he said, but what I gained from what he said was that the flow of energy is the will, and what that is God. God is the flow of energy, and like that is what
Who said
works
that?
through you. What was that?
Who said this?
Or this is just what I interpreted
Oh,
from what Ray was saying. He was talking about the will.
Ray.
Yeah, like
Ray was,
the will that you have is more so your imagination wandering into new territory, not necessarily imposing it on the
yeah.
world.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
to me is the idea of stress. A lot
Right.
of people didn't really like when I posted this, but to me it makes a lot of sense intuitively. But yeah.
So flesh it out some more. So then how does Nietzsche fit in with the Christian thing there? That's good. I like that.
Yeah, well, I think like what he gets at is this effortless life of high vitality and flow, but he understands biology. I mean, I think that's clear, people who've seen his work. But what he forgets is that there's always someone giving you the ability to have a will in the first place, or there is always a force giving you that, and that's what we cannot explain. That's what we call God.
Right.
And that just I think when a person submits, they actually find that they have more power in that submission, and that's what I found from submitting to Christ, and it just made so much sense to me.
Right. Right. And I think it takes a very stressed, anxious person to think that submission will hurt me.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
It's a fight or flight reptilian brain type move that you're making in your mind to say, I don't want to be a loser and say I have to forgive my enemies. Well, that's the reason why you think that's a loser move, is because you think you're going to get killed by your enemies and destroyed. But they
Yep.
can't defeat us, because if they defeat us, if they strike us down, we'll become more powerful than they can possibly imagine. But they
Exactly.
don't understand that. That's the Nietzschean mistake. They don't get it. I mean,
Yep.
it's just playing out right on front of television with Trump, but nobody,
Exactly.
God, it's so frustrating. They don't realize the more that you surrender to this, the Christ archetype in your life, like just being able to stand up. That was like a little mini picture of like a death and resurrection. The dude gets almost killed by a millimeter he moves. So it's God's providence, goes down, comes up, and still, says fight. You're getting a little Christ haunted mini play right there in such a transformative way. Kids in Uganda right now are reenacting it with joy because it gives them hope. I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing more powerful than the story of Christ. And to the extent that you lean into it, you get to be alongside that ride, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And people almost act like, because I think a big critique is that, oh, there's no striving in Christianity. I think it's the complete opposite. I think it's all about striving. But
Well,
yeah.
so wait, now you said earlier though that life should be effortless, and then you said life should be about striving. Explain that for people who are a little more binary thinking. They might think I don't get what you're saying there.
Yeah, so I think life should be effortless, but effort should really be effortless. Discipline should just simply happen, and the only force being applied should be the force of nature. Really just that God works through you, and whatever you want to do, you are able to achieve through God. That's what I see.
Right. What does discipline look like? Give us some examples of what you mean. Just random,
D
whatever.
discipline, I think just like trying to take care of your nutrition, work on like a stressful project that you've been trying to
Mm.
figure out for a while, but you really want to get it done with.
Now, the
Yeah.
discipline of doing your taxes, that's a little bit stress inducing. My God.
To me, that's an interesting thing because I think you can always outsource stuff like that, and that's part of it too, I think. But
Yeah. Especially when you talk about controversial things in the public, they're always like, well, I got to be making sure very careful here what I do. Um, so yeah, I mean, and yeah, you're definitely not going to be fed high thyroid food in prison for God's sake. I mean, dear God, it's seed oil, it's trash, right? They don't feed. Probably the best thing you can do if you're in prison is to eat the candy in the commissary if you can.
yeah, probably. Yeah.
Gosh. What happened with Ray Peat? Why did a lot of people have tried to be rude and say, "Oh, he died at 86. If he had the key to anti-aging, why didn't he live to be 106?" It's kind of ignorant or something. But could you give us a little bit of insight into his early life and what may have contributed to some of the things he had going on?
Yeah, I think people always say that like, oh, he lived to 86, that's not even impressive. He lost his teeth. I think that the one thing people don't even know is that he dealt with like X-ray radiation when he was very young. That kind of set off his whole
He kind of
spiral
had like a
into health.
Marvel. He had like a Marvel origin story, like a
Little bit,
superhero.
yeah, a
Wow.
little bit, yeah. And
So tell us what happened. He fell into a vat of X-rays. What?
or no, I know that he had just a lot of I don't remember exactly. I think maybe in one of his articles or interviews he talked about it, but X-ray he dealt with like hypothyroidism after that, and he dealt with a lot of issues with his digestion as well. I think he had like chronic diarrhea, like, and this is all from like a young age, and like trying to put all of it together was his entire life work, and
Wow.
really like I think the fact that he
Was his dad like pretty brilliant about nutrition? Because he talks about how he cured his own diabetes using brewer's yeast.
yeah.
Why would
I
brewer's yeast be effective, by the way? The high B complexes in them, or what?
Yeah, the B vitamins. I
Yeah.
think probably B1 in particular would be the one that would really help with diabetes, but just all of them in general. Yeah.
God,
I think
brewer. See, that's a thing that you might have to muddle through because brewer's yeast is awful. Have you ever had
yeah,
it?
I
Is
haven't
there a
had it before, no.
is there a trick to eating that? Well, you haven't had it. Dear God.
I think that you can actually, because I've heard this before, is that brewer's yeast can be estrogenic. So if you actually
Yeah.
just like I don't know if you steep it in water and
Yeah.
then it kind of since the B vitamins are water soluble, you can drink the water and just ditch the actual like yeast like the
Dude, this
fiber
guy's like
portion of it.
Squanto. He's talking about all these things to kill the. This is brilliant. I like it. So we
Yeah,
just say get the B1, ditch the yeast in general, right?
you
Yeah.
could just, yeah, I think B1 probably the best way to go
What's your
about.
favorite B1 sup? Do you have a brand you like? Go ahead and promote them
I
if you
like I
want.
like Pure Bulk or bulk supplements. Those are typically my favorite brands. They're
B1.
just like, yeah.
How
I
many
for
how many
most supplements, they're pretty pure, but
how much B1 do you like to take every day or do you not take it every day?
I usually take a B complex. So I take Georgi Dinkov's B complex. He has like a
Energen?
Energen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I
There you
take
go. There you go, Georgie.
Yeah,
You better
little
come
plug
back
to
on the
him.
show, man. I'm getting you a lot of promotions, brother.
Yeah.
Energen, get your Energen today. Come on,
Yeah.
Georgie. He used to come on every day. Now he's too busy killing rodents and saving their lives and stuff. My God, he's
Yeah.
like bringing them back to life and recording their near-death experiences.
Yeah. It's funny.
Goodness.
Yeah. I think like pure bulk supplements, those are the two that I like. I'll take like thiamine hydrochloride. There's a few different forms of B1 actually that people seem to do better with the other.
I tried the Thiamax brand. Do you like that one?
Oh, you know what? That actually gave me an issue, I think, from the sulfur content
Oh
because
my gosh.
I dealt
I've
with
been
like
smelling sulfur lately. I don't know if that was hell coming for me or that's what you're telling me. It's the Thiamax.
I think some people do well with it. Is it the I think it's like TTFD
Yeah.
because there's that form and then there's like a subaltima or subultimate. I don't know, but I have actually a friend on Twitter is take thiamine J. He wrote a great thread about thiamine therapy, high dose. Because I think a lot of people that like don't really see too much of an effect from smaller doses. You can get up to like a gram, and that's where you can really start to see.
Do you
It's
take
almost like
like how many drops of like Energen do you take a day? Or do you have an average that you go for?
his is I think like one serving is like 25 drops.
Right.
I'll usually take 25 drops like every other day,
Yeah.
or I'll just take like just 25 drops whenever I don't take it every day, but I just whenever I feel like it.
Now, here's something that, I'm thinking about. He seems to emphasize a lot of the power of B vitamins, and yet a lot of the alternative health world has always really liked vitamin C. Vitamin C has been like an OG, you know what I mean? In like the
Totally.
conspiracy health
Yep.
alternative world. What's going on there with that whole deal, the reputation differences there?
Yeah, I mean, there's this I don't know if he's a scientist, but there's a guy named Linus Pauling who did a lot about vitamin C and just the roles that it plays in supporting
Was he
metabolism.
was he the Ray Peat of vitamin C respecters?
A little bit, yeah. I think actually
Yeah.
Ray liked Linus
Yeah.
Pauling, so
Yeah,
yeah,
I've always heard
that's
that name dropped in the alternative health world that people
yeah.
love the vitamin C thing. Is it as cracked up as they make it out to be? I've heard some people push it back a little bit, and other people say no, it's good. Or how do you
Yeah,
see
so
that?
there's an interesting like kind of paradox with this is that most of the vitamin C on the market is derived from is citric acid
Uh-huh.
derived from mold. So
Oh
derived from
yeah.
like Aspergillus niger or Niger mold.
Careful.
And yeah, great name. And yeah, it's been shown to like lead to like autism symptoms and stuff like that. To me, it's something that people should stay away from. Yeah.
What about liposomal? That's the same thing though, right? It's coming from the citric
For the
acid.
most part, you can get like
So it's
a
best to just
fruit
get your
derived.
vitamin C from oranges and stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah, or you can get actually like people do have extract. There's a few brands that have pure like derived from cherries
Yeah.
or derived from I forget what other citrus fruit, but yeah.
Yeah. What do you let's talk about orange juice. I had a citrus brand in my past life of Florida Citrus Company. And so I didn't
Oh,
know about
really?
Ray Peat, but I guess I was already intuitively going into my future, right? About what we were all going to need. But I created a citrus company years ago. Um, and I'm glad I did because it was ahead of its time and it's probably going to be brought back into play um, because of what I know now. But let's talk about the joys of orange juice. Why is orange juice so important? Some people might think, and I'm just going to say this, some people might think Ray Peat is an old guy just trying to get people to eat old people food, right? Because
Yeah.
he's wants you to eat Jello all the time. Now, not Jello the brand, but like gelatin. So you're tearing up some Jello all the time. You're drinking your cup of milk. You're drinking your cup of orange juice. Some people might say, dude, he grew up, 1950s. That's just what people had. He's telling people to eat oatmeal, oat bran. He's talking about well cooked white button mushrooms. I mean, this sounds like some people might say this is nursing home food at its best, right? I mean, this is fine dining. If you're at a high quality nursing home, you're going to get your big Jello with its fruit in it. You're going to get your cup of OJ. You're going to get your cup of milk, and you're going to get your cooked poached nondescript white fish,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, so that's very Ray Peat.
Yeah.
So, uh, what's going on there? I mean, first what are the joys of OJ, and then what's going on with his seemingly just trying to get us to eat like old people feel?
Yeah, that's a great observation because I've seen it from the other end too, where people have said, "Oh, he's just trying to justify as like," or Ray Pete is like a little kid disguised in like a
Yeah,
suit with like
yeah,
like the three kids
yeah,
standing
yeah,
on
yeah,
top
yeah,
of.
yeah.
Someone made a great tweet
Yeah, the
about them.
90s, the 90s kids movies where they were always
Exactly.
in those suits. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because again, we talked about like the idea of supporting the youth metabolism. To me, it's just so clear that both the elderly and the child or the children are drawn to the same foods, and I think it's due to the anti-stress effect of just like dairy, fruit, gelatin. Really, it's intuitive, and almost like the place where you lose that is kind of in adulthood, which is funny, but
Yeah. Yeah. That's why they have a midlife crisis because they've just done the adulting stupid idea for so long and they've really hurt
exactly.
themselves.
Yep.
So midlife crisis is a good thing because when you get in touch with your, I mean, it can be a good thing. You know, you get in touch with your childlike self and they're like, what's wrong with you? You've lost your mind. You're leaving
Yeah.
adult land. What do you know? I'm actually recovering it in some ways, right?
Totally. I mean, yeah, you got to because like I think I maybe said is like Carl Jung had the idea that you got to go through and
Yeah.
then return.
I
And
like that. I'm looking at that from a chiastic standpoint too. I keep thinking about, have you heard of chiasms in the Bible? It's
I'm
like
not
the
sure.
structure of Hebrew wisdom literature where the first point in like a lecture from a teacher, the first verse and then the last verse are structurally in this
Ending similar.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they're paralleled all the way through to the very core, and the core in the middle is like the truth that encapsulates the whole story. So
Yeah.
like it's different from ours, which is like, like the way we have our structure of narrative, like the kind of the so I wonder how that fits in with that. I have to think about that some more. But I
Yeah.
think that's how like Christ comes in chiastically in history,
It
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
Right? Where you have like he comes in the middle of history and completes it, and then that's the mission, and then everything else is going to be like chiastically structured out from there. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's a thing, but I like
No,
it.
I know what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah. And like
Like the
Adam,
high growth state of our early life is matching the high growth state of the consummation of history. I think that's
totally. Yeah.
right.
And almost like Michelangelo's like Sistine Chapel with like the hands of God and Adam, that reaching out is the exact same thing. It's the polarity of trying to
Right.
drive to that. That's what stimulates life.
Wait, say that. All right. So unpack that some more. You give them, that's a good one. Go for that.
Yeah, no, I think the idea of reaching out into the unknown, reaching out
Right.
for God is what drives life forward. That's ultimately progress. That's
Right. So God wants us to be on. See, that's the thing. I knew it. And it's so true. All the great scientists were like that. God, it's like it's not that, but it feels like God is kind of like hiding, but he's not because he's in everything. But he makes it mysterious so that we keep hungering and we're dissatisfied. Like we want to know him more, right?
yes. I don't
And
think it's a
so,
dissatisfaction necessarily, but it's almost the point is hunger. Even though you are full, the
right.
point is to keep it
So
moving,
you're
you know?
telling me we all get 2 scoops of ice cream, just like,
No,
oh wow,
you get as many as you
yeah.
think you need. That's how it works.
Remember
Yeah.
they got mad at Trump because they said he wanted 2 scoops and everybody else got 1 scoop.
I
Yeah, that was a
didn't
thing.
know that.
That was a meme
Uh,
thing back when they were ticked at him that he got to have a double serving. Everybody else had the same.
yeah, yeah.
But see, that's that high estrogenic stress state that says everybody gets 1 scoop because we're in a seriously scarce as heck environment. And we
Yeah.
could all die from wolves tomorrow. And we have to ration this stuff out. And I think that's why Ray rejected statist forms of the left too, like state
Uh-huh.
imposed communism, because that was obviously like imposing that kind of mindset, like still working within the framework of like trying to mediate and distribute resources in a way that would be more, I guess, equitable or whatever. But doing it by violence is really still submitting to the domain of death, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So let's talk about orange juice. What's so special about orange juice? It's got B vitamins in it. It's got flavonoids. Tell people about some of the what. Why does he recommend orange juice for people? I want people to get some healing benefits out of this because I know people are going to enjoy the philosophy, but I like to give people some take home things they can understand that it's not like I don't want anything to be like a black box.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
oh, I have to drink orange juice. That's the new ideology. Oh, no, I mean, no. What is it about orange juice that is so good?
Yeah, it's really just the main thing is just the simple sugars. And of course Ray talked about sugar and its ability to support metabolism more so than starch because starch takes longer to digest. actually stimulates insulin and raises your it's higher on the glycemic index, which is what regulates blood sugar, then this is starch I'm speaking about. So like wheat, grains, nut or what do you call it? Potatoes, rice, those would be starches. Simple sugars like fruit and juice actually balance the blood sugar. They might spike it a little bit more immediately, but if that's paired with a protein, that helps a lot. And then sugar itself is anti-cortisol. So that's a major anti-stress substance. There's like a lot of research that's talking about
That's
this.
why
This isn't
people
even,
say you
yeah,
eat sugar if you're stressed out, right?
yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of the main thing. And then of course, like the vitamin C, and that's a good thing for supporting immunity. And
What about those flavonoids?
yeah, there's naringenin and I forget the other one, apigenin, I think. They're actually really rich in the peels of oranges, but also in orange juice. Those are actually like anti-inflammatory. Orange juice is like a pretty much can be viewed as like an anti-inflammatory food when it's high quality orange juice.
But he
Because
doesn't like pulp in the orange juice, right? Because it's
yes,
got
yeah.
fiber, just like endotoxin, right? Is exacerbated by fiber. Is that his idea there?
Fiber, yeah, fiber can feed the gut bacteria that produces endotoxin. So that's kind of the issue with that. Yeah, soluble fiber, that is, insoluble fiber like from carrots. I can't think of any other sources right now. Blueberries is one of them. Ray wasn't really a fan of those for seeds. I tend to think they're good, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's insoluble fiber. That seems to be that's not an issue. But yeah, the soluble fiber, you don't want pulp in orange juice. But typically, some of the mainstream brands of orange juice, they taste kind of sour, and most of the time that's due to just like poor quality oranges. Like essentially, the fruit is stressed, like due
Yep.
to like poor growing conditions.
Oh, don't get me started. I know
Yep,
about
and
what
all the
happened to stressed
pesticides.
Florida fruit. Trust me, we had to
Yep.
deal with the citrus greening disease. These guys didn't know how to take care of the tree health, and they just
Yeah.
massacred the trees. We had, I don't know if you followed that story. There was it's called the Asian psyllid. They
Uh-uh.
blamed it on China, but it was probably just their poor nutrition standards because they said this little psyllid came from China through the Miami ports and it started infecting all the Florida citrus trees and they have like no cure for it. And of course, because they're all into genetics like everybody else in medicine, all they do is look for a genetic solution to like, bioengineer citrus trees that are like they have pig genetics in them or something, spinach, instead of trying to like solve it metabolically. Everything's
Yeah.
always metabolism is always neglected in all of these different fields.
It's literally the driver of life. Like that,
Yeah.
that's the funny part because people view metabolism as just, oh, it's how much food you can eat without gaining weight, or it's how much calories you burn. No, no, no. Metabolism is just energy production, and that happens at every level of society. And that's, I think, an important thing to realize for people is that metabolism can exist outside of the body. Metabolism can exist in society. There's like the flow of money is a
Right.
metabolism.
Right. Yeah, that's why I said in the future we're not going to have debt, and
Interesting.
there will be no
Huh.
credit. You don't need that. You're going to have so because I think money has more of power and dominion over people. The more they don't understand how to unlock kind of a post scarcity use of resources.
Totally.
Right. So
Yeah.
when
I mean,
you have unlimited energy, you don't need the bankers and the debt machines to like run your system anymore. That's
yeah. I mean, it's
That's why,
thinking of
but they
what's
give
not
us,
forget. Yeah.
but they create a false dialectic, right? They say, okay, oil is this or that pollutant. They tell us CO2 is a thing that's bad. No, we need more of it, and it'll make the Earth grow. The Earth has metabolism. Earth wants to evolve. Earth is a
Exactly.
Earth is an organism, and Christians should be scared of that. They're so terrible. Christians buy so many of the dumb arguments of the enemies of the kingdom of heaven. And they'd put, oh no, that sounds like new age. No, it's not. It's because you never thought critically and took Jesus seriously. You know,
I think so.
it's
Yeah.
like dumb. These people, they have this dead view of matter. It's all dumb, like unstimulated random matter, and then God is this Deus Ex thing that comes in and like stimulates magic in it. Boom, boom, and it's dead. How dumb is it? That is anti-Christian.
Yeah.
It is
Oh,
Gnostic, it's dualism, it's all this that's not Christianity. But because along the way, we got infected with Greek philosophy and other things that had good ideas. I'm not trying to make anybody an enemy. Like, that's the scapegoat. No, but they get these bad ideas milked, like get processed into the Christian popular imagination, and then we get stuck with these dumb ideas that are part of the problem. Like,
Totally.
no,
Yeah.
Earth is an organism. It needs higher CO2 to expand and grow and to help life form grow into more exciting forms in a faster way, including us and our brains. We should have big baby brains. I don't know how that's going to look, you know,
Yeah.
but I hope it
It,
doesn't look like those gray aliens, dear
yeah.
God.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But like Ray had a nice thing he was talking about, like the um essentially liberationists, like does he think humanity is gonna get saved? And he tends to think that like the appropriate intelligence will arise like when it's needed to. And like of course, like if a person were to try to organize a movement against the currently established like dogmatic structures, they would have the resources to shut that down right away. So that's why I think like really the kind of movement towards a decentralized society, I mean, again, is ultimately it happens at the level of each individual. That's kind of why I think intuition is the driver of that. But
I do have an intuition that if we can create energy too cheap to meter. See, here's the thing where they got themselves trapped, right? Ready for this? So they convinced the half of the world the Western world population that the planet's gonna die or whatever because of pollution, right? And so endless energy, unlimited energy that's abundant there's many different paths to explore to do that. And we do that on this show. We explore what those look like and like how to like put those in the market. But with the level of decentralized media and HD powered, HD quality, high definition filming you can do with phones, if you have an army of Nikola Tesla, so to speak, of our time, creating all kinds of abundant forms of energy, there's no way that the forces of decay can keep that down because their own base that they draw from has been psyop to hell and back that the planet's about to blow up.
exactly.
So see, Jesus always has a way of allowing the evil fools to collapse on their own inertia. And you can see that I can tell you this movie a mile away. They have convinced, and that's going to be their own undoing.
Yep.
Because liberals are going to be like, are you effing kidding me? You're killing people. I don't care if they're freaking Christian conservatives or whatever. Whoever is bringing this that's going to save the planet from pollution, I want that technology. And they're going to overwhelm the forces and they'll do everything in the book. They're going to, if they're, I use Nikola Tesla as an archetype figure. Like if someone created unlimited energy forms right now, they do everything in the book to call them everything a monster, racist, horrible stuff to get people to hate them. But I think if enough people think intelligently about this and coordinate action together, you could have enough, like not just one inventor, but armies of them decentralized inventing all kinds of forms and documenting it with high definition video and podcasts and videos, distributing clips of how it works. Mm-hmm. It's game over for these fools. They don't understand. Their time is totally up. The corrupt oligarchs have put all of the pieces together for their own demise.
And the time is coming. Yeah.
It's coming. And you don't even have to, it's all going to be nonviolent in terms of their final destruction. The only thing they have going for it is to try to hope that they can stoke people into violent reaction to their disgusting violence. That's the only thing that gives them oxygen. Yeah. They are literally like the lactic acid fermentation state of bacteria.
Exactly.
They require they require your hate to like that's the only way that they are able to fuel themselves is through the decay.
I think the only way you can see it, like at that cellular level. Yeah. It's like the primitive organisms wasting resources, concentrating energy and towards them, not spreading it, not complexifying. It's so clear to me. But yeah, Ray said something, he was like, the evil elites, they always give you a way out. There's always a way out. They'll give you one. You just need to look for it. But
yeah, because because they're not that bright. They're dastardly and they do all kinds of really creepy stuff and they're disgusting, but they're not on the whole that bright. And because they the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone is something they can't wrap their minds around. They imitate it, but they can't fully embrace it, right? Because they're like grasping for that power of the one ring. They can't fully let go of the power thing. And that's the secret of Christ's power, right? Is that like he allows his opponent to try to strike him down, and then he defeats them because he's like, okay, you're going to kill me, and then I'm going to make this instrument of torture my logo on your empire in a few years later. Okay, that's how it's going to happen. That's totally owning this. And he's been and then and then they use, to the extent that people use the technological advantage that comes with the experience of the gospel for wicked purposes, it ends up defeating them as well, right? And so what I'm saying is that the elites understand on some intuitive level the art of like what I call the social aikido of Christ and the dismantling of power structures through nonviolent exposure of it, but they don't fully have the courage or the intelligence or wisdom to actually do it. Because if they did it, they wouldn't be evil anymore. They would embrace the truth, right? Um,
Totally. Yep.
which is always possible for them to do theoretically. I always think it's very interesting, the conversion concept. But a lot of people, like you said, a lot of these elites are very unhealthy. They don't look that healthy. People, I think people give them a lot more power than, and they like that, they think they want us to think that they have this high state of thyroid and metabolic energy. And they really don't, they're really, you look at Bill Gates, that's not a healthy guy.
No, not at all. Yeah.
So it shows you how stupid they are, because a lot of people think, well, they're feeding us the trash, but they eat that, they're not eating it themselves. And I don't think that's true.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's almost
that's a big tell for how dumb they really are. Really. You know what I
totally.
mean?
Yeah.
Because you and I are just a couple of kids. We don't know anything compared to these guys that have literal like armies of people that do research. They could have figured out the stuff that Ray Peat talked about and still lie to us and give us the bug slop and the poof of trash and then eat like healthy behind the scenes, but they don't. So that shows you how dumb they are.
Yeah. It's just,
Really
it seems
foolish.
like it's mainly incompetence driving this. But of course, I think at the end of the day, really it's evil, but it manifests in stupidity, really, I think. That to me seems like um it's just it is it in being unable to give up the control.
Right.
And that's ultimately the stress
Yeah.
state.
Yeah. Rene Girard talks about like this, the mimetic crisis that is the foundation of all state and cultures and stuff. He talks about it like you have this snowballing state of aggression where we're mimetic and we mimic each other and we imitate each other in a positive way, and then we can imitate each other in a negative way, right? Where we start like people who could be best friends for years, and then something really bad happens. Like they date their ex-girlfriend or something, and all of a sudden it's like enemies, right? And it's hard to go back to good once you start a mimetic cycle of negativity, Rene Girard says. I see Ray Peat and the stress theory stuff as a great overlay to what Rene Girard discovered on the anthropological social level. Because he said when you have this high state of stress, usually a plague or a famine, that pits people in a state of scarcity. They're going to be more likely to be aggressive towards each other. And that's like bad blood is spreading contagiously through our behavior patterns in a
Totally.
community. And then it needs to be, and so in that state, you look for a scapegoat that stands out. Now, this is the interesting thing. I need to figure this out, how left hemisphere brain maps out the left side of our hemisphere of our brain. How does that fit with the control and release of these stress chemicals? I think there's something there, and I don't know it yet. I'm just guessing, because Ian McGilchrist points out that the left hemisphere of our brain is more like, if you think of it like a chicken, the left hemisphere brain is good at looking at like a sea of pebbles and looking for the seed to peck at. So it's really good at focusing in on something specific, isolated from the rest. The right hemisphere is more like observing is there a hawk? Is there rain? Has the temperature dropped? The intuitive, that's like a more magnetic, holistic picture. So from my physics perspective, everything is magnetic, dipolar particles. Our bodies are made up of these dipolar, positive, negative poles, particles. Each particle has both positive and negative pole, just like in a bar magnet. All of our particles are made up of that. So the right hemisphere is probably tapping into more of an intuitive, more holistic view of the whole environment. The left hemisphere is good at like isolating. So that's good for survival, right? You got to look for the seed to peck it and not the rock. I think what happens with Rene Girard's scapegoating process is that in that sea of high stress, cortisol, estrogen, serotonin, because you don't have food. You're mentally, you're mentally deficient, nutritionally deficient. You're eating garbage. It's winter. That's why, by the way, ritual human sacrifices often happen in the winter and the fall. Think about it. Scarce resources is stressful. So you do a sacrifice, or well, first it starts off as a spontaneous scapegoat murder, and Rene Girard says somebody sticks out in a sea of sameness, and I think that's that left hemisphere part of our brain that's probably associated with the stress feeling that makes you feel like that person stands out. This person is the cause of our problems, right? Maybe they're a witch, maybe they're disfigured, maybe they have a hunchback, maybe they have a club foot like Oedipus. Whatever it is, most of the gods in mythology look like they had disfigurements or handicaps. But today, that's not as, fashionable as a taboo. So the taboos are going to be like, you're too rich, or you're the wrong race, right? Or you're the wrong gender, or whatever. You're not using the right holiness codes in your speech rhetoric, right? You're not saying the politically correct language. Whatever it is, it becomes the opportunity to say, this person caused us to feel this way, and then everybody unites in unanimous accusation and blame, and they kill that person, and there's a cathartic release, like, okay, we've done it. That sounds like dopamine, right? That sounds to me, right? So you're going from this high state of serotonin and high stress to this like total release. Because
Yes.
remember, Rene Girard, he's talking about this, and he shows that later on it becomes remembered as a ritual. So first, it's a spontaneous, unconscious thing that humans do all over the world, the scapegoat murder. And then it gets remembered as like a ritual. And that's where we get ritual from. So the ritual remembrance of it is recalibrating that same, okay, we're in a state of crisis again, bad blood. Let's do what our ancestors did. And earliest forms of sacrifice look like ritual cannibalism. When you're cooking a human, you're going to get that thyroid. That's going to cause your vibration euphoria to go through the roof. Dude, we're mapping biology and anthropology in real time on this show right here.
That is fascinating.
Isn't
Yeah.
that cool? So you're getting the euphoria of like you're being in touch with your heart. You feel, when you supplement thyroid, you notice your heart more, you're more euphoric, you're more embodied, right? So you're experiencing this cathartic release that Rene Girard described by studying literature and ancient societies, and Ray Peat's model maps perfectly with the experience that you're getting this total release, and you're getting, so think about it. What are some ritual behaviors that people do to recommemorate that same experience? Ritual orgies, ritual feasts. Again, dopamine, happy, joy, gregarious. You're eating tons of fruit. You're eating, chickens, again, cooked with the thyroid. You're getting all that thyroid. And that festival is associated with a sacrifice. That's what they call it, it's called sacred time. Sacred time. So sacred time is marked out time for a festival like Saturnalia or whatever. And that's where you're going to have feasting, you're going to have orgies, a state of undifferentiation that culminates in a sacrifice to remember what it takes to relieve the stress from destroying a society communally.
That's amazing. Yeah, because I think there's so much in that, which is
Go
really,
wherever you want, man. I'm just throwing this out
yeah.
there as quickly as I can with the time we have.
Yeah, no, I think that like there's something that Ray or maybe Danny Roddy talked about of when animals are stressed, they tend to try to reproduce in an
Yeah,
attempt to save themselves and keep their genetics, or what do you call it? Keep their bloodline going.
yeah,
And you almost notice like that happens with like all forms of life. Like it happens with trees, they'll try and produce fruit in an
yeah,
attempt to save themselves. But yeah, like I think the kind of hedonism is really just driven by a desire to restore energy flow. Like I said, I think with like the marathon runner, or even just like a person like watching porn. I think that's another good
yeah.
example, because it's clear that something is wrong in the organism trying to
Right.
restore homeostasis.
Right.
So it's
That's
fast.
what,
Yeah.
yeah, because Ray Peat describes the orgasm as kind of like a big take a breath release, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So if you think of the scapegoat mechanism as like a stress induced view of the sacred, right? And that's why rituals of orgies, rituals of feasting is all associated with this sacrificial release of the tension,
Yeah,
because it's a psychological trick that humans discovered to manage their stress. There's something, and I wonder, and I bet the bioenergetic paradigm and this stuff has mapping onto the other parts of Girard's theory, like the idea that human beings are mimetic and we want to imitate our neighbor, but ultimately we copy our neighbor. We want to keep up with the Joneses. We don't want a Cadillac because there's something intrinsically good about a Cadillac. We want a Cadillac because the neighbors we want to be like own a Cadillac, or so to speak, right? Or a Porsche, whatever it is. We don't want to live in that zip code because that's intrinsically a better zip code. We want to live in that zip code because of the people there. We want to be like them. They look like people we want to be like. We want to have something that they have, right? That's the whole power of social media. Everybody's presenting photos. I'm on a mountain. You're like, wow, I wish I was there instead of having to do this work at the office right now, right? That desire, envy. And ultimately, Girard says all desire is a desire for being. You want to be one, right? Because we're made in the image of the Trinity, and the Trinity is society and unity in one, right? It's this complete indwelling and like self-giving posture to the other. And so there's this desire in human beings that gets skewed, that wants to like possess somebody else's being, because it's almost like our Trinitarian nature in a twisted, sinful way. Like instead of enjoying them and learning from them in a positive way, we end up wanting to beat them through competition, right?
totally. Yeah.
So
It's
I
like
think there's
jealousy versus compassion.
right, right. I think that the I think the bioenergetic thing could probably help explain mimetic desire and how it goes negative in a way that would be very helpful for the work of social sciences, right? To
Totally. Yeah.
keep linking the hard sciences with the social sciences. Um, I think that's important, and I think that the this idea of like there's some kind of uh, vibrational, there's a physics level to mimetic desire as well, I think, right? Like magnets, like think about a magnetic, like positive and negative. From something that seems far away from you, you're drawn towards it. It's because your subjective mind perceives them as the opposite of what you are, right? So that's the idea of like everything, the grass is greener on the other side or on the other hill, right? It's like this idea that that which is not what I have must be desirable, right? So you're drawn towards that intuitively in a magnetic kind of movement. But the more you get closer to them, you can start to get closer to the perception that that which you thought was different from you is actually much more similar to you, which is the same as the repulsion of two similar poles, right? So if our mind and our thoughts and our desires all have magnetic frequencies, then we're experiencing this kind of conscious awareness that's actually a kind of magnetic interaction experience. And we can be in, it's not like it's a mechanism we're not in control of. We can actually guide it based on our perception, right? And that's why they say good fences make good neighbors, because if you're too undifferentiated, like then you're in a state of competition, right? And one of the things that I think is the goal of God on earth is to help us learn how to become one without having rivalry with it, right? Because the scapegoat mechanism is a violent way of resolving our differences into a unification of release, because we had to kill somebody, right? So that Jesus steps into that machine, he exposes it, he breaks it, he destroys it, and it's been ruined ever since. And that's why the powers that be around the world are always trying to like disguise their propaganda in the name of victims. You know, like we have to go to this war because they're killing kids or babies or something, and that's always what we're lied into. um, you didn't have to do that before Christ. You just say we're going to war with this country because they're a bunch of losers and we're going to defeat them.
Yeah.
Now you have to say, no, we're going to war because we're teaching them how to be more like feminists, and we're teaching them how to like stop killing the little kids, like Assad gassed his little kids and stuff. We can't do this. So we come in the name of Christ to do our wars and empires now. So we're so Christ haunted that they have to always come up with more and more elaborate ways to like convince us to continue this process of the scapegoat murder machine that we used to do before Christ. but it's all coming apart, right? And there has to be, and the reason why I'm saying all this is just to say, I bet you could help with this process of like mapping out the some of the biological processes going on here.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting for me like to think of what you were saying about the I completely lost my train of thought right now.
It's
I'm
okay.
trying to remember. Let's see. Oh no, I think like if we realize that it's not always about having the relationship fully connected, but the connection actually happens just through the resonance, what the
Yes.
actual energy level that someone's on. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily about needing to be in proximity. So that's kind of one of the
Right.
things referring to about the magnet and like being drawn in by God or being drawn in by something that you desire, which I think that we have desires, and I don't think desires are actually a negative thing. And I think when
Right.
you
No. Yeah.
understand the biological mechanisms behind that, that's when you can actually lean into every single craving that you have, and it'll be generative. And it's almost that only gets distorted in a stressed out society that tells you and imposes
Right.
what you
Yeah.
should be doing. So it's almost getting out of that state of the ex or so-called trust the expert and focusing on your energy to be able to truly listen to your heart, listen to your gut, listen to ultimately your intuition, which is, I think, your connection to God. That's the whole point. And I think it starts with improving metabolism. And the first thing I think would be digestion, but
Right.
we call it gut feeling for a reason. But
Yeah. What would be the first thing you would do with digestion for people since you mentioned it?
I think the first good thing to try would be like a raised carrot salad. So I think if people haven't tried that before, that would be a good thing. It's
Is
just
it
like
important to make it in the salad form with the oil and vinegar, or can people just eat a raw carrot for people on the go?
I think raw carrots are good, but it's actually wild how much of a difference I think people notice from making the carrot salad. So that's just like one carrot grated lengthwise, then a tablespoon of white vinegar or apple cider vinegar,
Yeah.
and a tablespoon of coconut oil or olive oil, and yeah, just that eaten daily could be good. I think gelatin is another
You
really
think
good.
it's do you think it's the do you think it's the power of the magnetic experience of ritually doing the making of the salad that enhances its like effect? I bet it is, man. I wouldn't be
Like,
surprised.
I'm sure your perception of how it will help you actually will.
Yeah, it's like if you're thinking you're eating the carrot, you're like, oh, well, it's just a carrot. I hope it works. And then if you do the process, you're like, oh, wow, this is really going to be the thing because this is done
Yeah,
a certain way.
it could be. I
Telling you,
mean,
man,
it's
that's
funny.
all
Yeah.
part of how healing works. You saw that interview I did with Dr. Lewis Coleman, right, with the stress theory,
Yes.
stress
Yeah.
mechanism. What did you
Yeah.
think of that, by the way? Did you have any thoughts?
I found it interesting because I know that was he familiar with Ray? I
A
mean,
little bit, yeah. You saw a little bit that he had some awareness, but not like on. He didn't really get into Ray's diet stuff. That's not like his thing.
yeah. I found the idea of just minimizing stress in surgery to be really interesting. I think Ray talked about like lidocaine before for turning off the organism's perception of pain. And that was I think another thing used in surgeries before. I don't know if he's ever like dealt with lidocaine, but it seemed interesting for me of trying to understand the mechanism of like the tissue repair and tissue injury and putting that together with carbon dioxide and the
Right.
anti-stress factors to how to facilitate that
Yeah.
process. And it seemed like a pretty clear idea on how to move forward with stuff like that in terms of
Yeah.
injury.
He seemed to put the blame on, I guess, the Ansel Keys of the CO2 removal, and
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
was Lewis. Well, it was Leaky Waters. That's what I remember. That's easy. It's someone, Dr. Leaky and Dr. Waters were anesthesiologists, and I guess that like they pulled an Edison on trying to make CO2 look dangerous so that it would not be used in anesthesiology.
Yeah.
And that's basically, I don't know if that was communicated, but it's kind of like what I mean by Edison is Edison notoriously would do demonstrations of alternating current to make it look dangerous. Like he would fry a dog or something live in front of an audience with alternating current
I didn't even know that. Wow.
to show how dangerous Tesla's AC was versus his
Huh.
DC form of energy. And so he would like, ladies and gentlemen, this is what this man wants you to have in your cities and your homes. Watch.
Yeah.
He would do alternating current and it would like fry the ever loving heck out of a dog. And then
Yeah.
he'd be like, this is what you're dealing with here, folks.
Oh,
Actually, he was a genius. He, the first, I think the first electric chair demonstration he used alternating current because he wanted to discredit Tesla's
Wow. Yeah.
paradigm and promote his DC method. So he organized this big PR campaign to do the first electric chair, and it was an AC thing. So he was a genius at PR. But that apparently is what, and maybe that wasn't clear in the interview. We'll have to go back and see, but that there was a kind of thing like that that took place with discrediting CO2.
Yes.
You
And
know,
then just the oxygenation. Like Ray would talk about that, like over oxygenating people is like the leading cause of death in like hospital. Or I don't know if that's true exactly, but I kind of remember him mentioning that. Because it made sense to me. Like same thing with like the kind of just homogenous prescription of drink a gallon of water a day. To me, I've never seen any benefit from drinking more water besides maybe from just like having as much as I like just drinking to thirst. Like I haven't had anything beyond that. But there's so many of those like medical dogmas that they almost start from you don't know if it's like what do you call it? Real um incompetence or just trying to
right?
hurt people, manipulate for control. And I think it's usually both playing into it. But
Yeah, I agree. And there's just depends on the level of who's doing it, of what which ones are motivating them,
yeah,
incompetence or malfeasance. But uh, there's also, of course, Ansel Keys with promoting seed oils and PUFA, right, for dietary health, for heart health.
exactly.
That
Yeah.
was scapegoating saturated fat. It's amazing. If humans are so resilient, why do they get so poisoned and tortured for decades over these singular figures? You know, it like sets a cascade. Why do you think that is?
I think it's ultimately just like when you're in a state of low energy, you don't have the control in yourself or the power in yourself. So you kind of need to outsource your
Yeah.
thinking or outsource your functioning. But it's almost like the person you're outsourcing to is just as impaired as you, and you don't even realize it. But
Yeah, it's like a pyramid of stupidity you don't realize. Yeah.
totally, yeah.
What do you think about what do you think Ray Peat would say is going on in humans' predilection for imitation, the way Rene Girard says that we don't just desire what our neighbor desires on like a I stick my tongue out, you stick your tongue out, I wear a hat, you wear a hat. We do that, but we also desire what we perceive them wanting to acquire. You know, like, oh, I need to be more like that. I need to be more of a rock star to be cool. I need to be more like this. I need to be more like Steve Jobs and yell at my employees if I'm an edgy innovator. You know, like we people emulate this stuff, right? We copy people to the point where it's good when it's positive, but it becomes negative, it becomes a problem. What do you think is going on there? What would Ray Peat hypothesize might be going on there?
I think he would try to look at the aspect of learning and maybe from emulating like a child emulating an adult. That to me seems like something that he focused on a lot. And almost like he actually wrote about this in generative energy. He said like bringing a child and just having it in the vicinity of like when you're working will probably be one of the most therapeutic things for helping their development. And they'll
Right.
unconsciously
Wow.
pick up on whatever's going on. And that I think is a good way of seeing it.
Wow.
But also I think like wanting to be like someone else or essentially emulation or imitation, I think at its most basic form is just trying to get at the truth. And like when we see something that we think is the truth, we're gonna try to pursue that. But there's a way of understanding who you are in pursuit of that. And usually in the process of emulation, I think you end up becoming yourself. So that's something I think is actually useful. But
Why do you think so? If why do you think that's really good? I like that. Why do you think kids are drawn to so much screen time? Is that a high stress state that they're responding to, or is it just so you know, you can look at it either way. So I don't know if there's one answer, but like, you know, when you go on streaming phones and iPads and TVs nowadays, you can have endless, you know, when I was a kid, cartoons were on at a certain time until cable came along, and then there was Cartoon Networks 24/7 or whatever. But before that, it was like you had to watch cartoons on Saturday morning, and that was it. Nowadays, kids have access to kids content like 24/7 around the clock any day of the week, and it's drawing them more and more to the screen. What Ray, of course, was against the internet. He hates digital, he likes the analog. How do you think Ray would talk about and solve or explain what's going on with the screen addictions let's just start with little kids.
Yeah, man, this has been fascinating to me because I've had some thoughts on this where I don't think that the actual tech itself is the issue, or I don't think what's on the tech is the issue. I think it's the blue light and the EMF that's the only issue. And if a person were to support their metabolism, they'll be able to regulate what they're looking at. They won't fall into the doom scrolling. They won't fall into fear, looking at things that make them fearful. They'll look at stuff that they want. It'll be generative. And that's been the case for me. When I'm in a poor state of energy, I cannot control my technology use at all. But like, I'm actually really glad that you brought this up because I actually heard Ray say something about this. Georgie was asking him about he's asking about the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, and his take on technology. Ray, I'm gonna have to find the excerpt, but Ray said I don't think the technology is the issue. I think it's the manipulation of it that's the issue.
Right,
It's
right.
like
But he's
that,
generally against digital. He likes analog media.
yeah,
Is it
for the
because it's
most
more
part.
easily manipulatable, or do you think it was just because, like, what do you think was going on there? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I honestly, that my opinion is that he probably was just on such a different generational
Right. You think it was
understanding
just
of
a product
tech.
of his
Yeah,
time thing?
I think it is. Yeah, as sharp as he is,
Yeah.
I think that was something that he maybe missed is the idea that like online can be a useful thing. But it would be interesting now, like down the line, what like Ray would have thought about like
But
where
what do you could hypothesize that humans had to get to a generative state to create the internet for people to understand Ray's ideas, or which were older ideas in some ways. So that's kind of like
I mean it's
a
if you
positive
can
spin
do
on
it,
the internet. If it wasn't for
yeah.
the internet, nobody would be talking about this at the rate it's now happening now. But
Totally. Yeah. And it's a way of speeding up the flow of energy, I think. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
you can gain knowledge and discussion.
yeah,
It's transfer of ideas. That's,
yeah.
I think, the whole point. Metabolism,
Yeah.
speeding up.
Yeah,
That's
but
the
see,
whole
my theory is that the negative effects of digital and computer technology are related to the disproportionate innovation in that world to the detriment of innovation in the world of physical atoms and material, right?
I think that's a good
So
way of putting it.
that
Yeah.
creates a kind of gnostic hellscape where we're detached from incarnational advancements, so we're all in our minds, and that a
Yeah.
big mind without incarnational advancements is like a think of it like Marshall McLuhan says that technologies are extensions of man, like the car extends the man's foot.
Yeah,
So
totally.
like think about like if we haven't had any extensions of man in our other parts of our sensorial experience and physical existence, but it's all been artificially expanding the mind in the world of bits. We've got too big of brains without tiny little bodies to fit it.
Yes.
So we
Totally.
have to innovate towards the world of atoms to kind of like balance out in a kind of homeostasis where we're advanced with the information. And I think actually everybody's so worried about AI. I think AI will be humbled. Like any kind of tyrannical attempt to use AI and those types of technologies will be defeated by proportionally good innovations in the world of atoms. Does that make sense?
100% know what you're
So if you
saying.
have
Yeah.
energy too cheap to meter that you don't require, you don't need the grid, you don't need wars for oil, you don't need solar panels and the stupid green energy scams that go along with solar panels. Like if you can really have energy too cheap to meter that you can be self-sufficient, um, if you could have anti-gravity instead of cars with tires and all that, if you can have anti-gravity floating discs that can get you across the United States in an hour's time without resisting gravity, but going along by repelling it because you understand how gravity actually is. If you can have elemental transmutation at room temperature instead of having to rape the earth and use sweat labor to do it, blood diamonds or whatever, you can go in and actually take trash and using magnetic fields turn it into gold, platinum, rhodium, iridium, whatever you need for electronics or whatever. You see, that creates such an incarnational higher vibration in the world of atoms that it's like yin yang. It kind of balances out this overextension of our minds that the digital world has given us without the balance. You have to have the balance,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
We can't just grow in our brains without a little body that can't move and we're enslaved because then we're enslaved. And that's why we're all in like that's why people are mentally unwell right now because they don't think anything can happen in the world of incarnation. Like I think once we understand how to use magnetic fields and electricity, we can grow beautiful crops. We could play classical music, make the fruit grow faster. more juicier, more sweeter, right? More delicious, less stressful on the trees to play Mozart while the trees are not going to be as stressed as much. I guarantee you. This is stupid. It's stupid on its surface, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
These vibrations have this like resonance effect that produces probably a kind of less stressful state. You could use magnetic fields to apply to accelerate the growth of fruit, so you could like literally solve scarcity issues without so much use of land. um, there's a whole host of things you could probably do to help people like get more nutrition cheaper. And again, if you have abundant energy, like I think cold fusion, like using ocean water for fuel at low temperature, would probably be one of those modes that you could use. But there's a whole host of different options that people could explore. But the first biggest problem is the mindset. If you think we've reached the end of history in the world of physics, and all we have to do is come up with bits like new apps and new AI and new distribution of resources, then yeah, we're going to be in this zero sum violent state forever, right? But if you expand the incarnational thing, then you can get to that post scarcity state where people will metabolically be in that higher state a lot easier. They won't have to
Yeah.
chug so much OJ, you know?
Yeah. No, well, no, actually, I think that that would be part of it. I think
I know,
chugging.
yeah, it would go along with it, but
Yes.
they wouldn't be so desperately in need of that, right? To like
I
make it
understand what
through
you're
the
saying.
day of like the
Yes.
bull that we're going through, right? Because I think a lot of this stuff is the mindset.
This is fascinating to me. Yeah. It's almost like if you would just look at the body and the just living at a level of your environment
Yeah.
instead of living inside a screen. I actually do think that living in tech is actually, I mean, like I said, like I think the transfer of ideas, the community is a huge thing,
Yeah.
but making that physical should be the whole point of it. That should be
Yeah.
the end goal. And
Well, say
like,
I think one of the most ecstatic things that I've always wanted to do when I was a kid is fly. You watch Peter Pan and that stuff, Superman. You want to fly. You want to fly over treetops. You want to float. It'd be better to float. I mean, if you fly, it's a little bit. If you have to like lay like Superman, but if you want to be able to just like float over a treetop and enjoy a sunset with a friend, that's the kind of mindset you have to have, right, to get going. Like, how does that work? Can we understand that gravity is magnetic and there's repulsion? And then how would you make a suit that would reflect that, or a device that's very comfortable and enjoyable to operate with ease? That's the kind of stuff we need to think. And if you do that, that's why the future will look more like childlike wonder, right? Because we will be able to like fly over treetops and watch sunsets in the middle of the forest and get back in 10 minutes, you know? So
totally, yeah.
I really appreciate your time. I know you got to run. Any last thoughts or anything you'd like to leave with?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. This was, I think, a great talk. I mean, I'd love to talk more. People can find me on Twitter. That's mainly where I post. I also have Instagram, YouTube. It's at Nate Lawrence _ for Twitter, and then at Nate Lawrence GC for YouTube and Instagram. And then I do coaching, health consulting. People can DM me about that. We can talk. And yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, I appreciate it. Let's do it again sometime. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you, man. Yep, you have a good one.